God instructed Moses to chisel 2 new stone tablets to replace the ones that were broken in anger over Israel's idolatry. Moses ascended Mount Sinai once again, where God reaffirmed his covenant, emphasizing his attributes of mercy, justice, and faithfulness. This renewal underscored God's commitment to his people, despite their previous disobedience, and highlighted the importance of Israel's obedience to his laws. God renewed his commandments, instructing the Israelites to follow them faithfully, and to avoid alliances with neighboring nations that could lead to idolatry. This warning was crucial, as it underscored the Israelites' vulnerability to adopting the practices of other cultures and drifting from their devotion to God. To ensure that God's presence would remain among his people, he provided detailed instructions for the construction of the tabernacle, a portable sanctuary. This sacred space was designed to reflect God's holiness, beauty, and order. The tabernacle was central to Israelite worship and served as a physical reminder of God's dwelling among them. The Ark of the Covenant was the most sacred object, representing God's presence and containing the stone tablets of the covenant. The table for the bread of the presence and the lampstand symbolized God's provision and light, affirming his sustenance and guidance for his people. The altar of burnt offering and the basin were designated for sacrifices and ceremonial cleansing, teaching the necessity of atonement and purification before approaching God. The Holy of Holies, separated by a veil, was the innermost part of the tabernacle where only the high priest could enter once a year, emphasizing the sanctity of God's presence. God appointed Bezalel and Oholiab, skilled artisans filled with his spirit, to lead the work on the tabernacle. This underscored the value of using one's gifts and talents in devoted service to God. The Israelites followed God's instructions precisely, working together to create a holy place for worship. When the tabernacle was completed and consecrated, the cloud of God's glory filled it, signifying his presence with Israel and confirming his approval of their obedience. With the tabernacle established, the Israelites resumed their journey toward the Promised Land. However, their wilderness trek continued to test their faith, revealing ongoing struggles with trust and obedience. Despite the visible signs of God's presence and his continuous provision, Israel frequently responded with complaints, fears, and doubts. Their dissatisfaction became evident when they grew weary of eating manna and longed for the variety of foods they had in Egypt. Moses, overwhelmed by their discontent, called out to God for help. In response, God sent quail to satisfy their cravings, but also sent a plague to discipline them for their lack of gratitude and faith. God then instructed Moses to send 12 spies, one from each tribe, to scout the land of Canaan. While all the spies reported the land's abundance, 10 of them instilled fear in the people by warning of the powerful inhabitants. Only Joshua and Caleb spoke with faith, urging the Israelites to trust God's promise. Due to their lack of faith, God declared that the current generation would not enter the Promised Land, and that they would wander in the wilderness for 40 years until a new generation arose. Later, a significant challenge to Moses and Aaron's leadership came from Korah, Dathan, Abiram, and 250 community leaders who claimed that all Israelites were equally holy. In response, God demonstrated the seriousness of rebellion by opening the ground to swallow Korah and his followers, and fire consumed the 250 leaders who offered unauthorized incense. Applications: God's faithfulness, despite failure. God's renewal of his covenant with Israel demonstrates his unwavering commitment to his people even after their failures. This teaches us that God remains faithful and merciful even when we fall short. The importance of consecration and obedience. The construction of the tabernacle and the Israelites' meticulous adherence to God's instructions highlight that true worship requires preparation, dedication, and obedience. Using talents for God's glory. The appointment of Bezalel and Oholiab reminds us to use our skills and talents in service to God. Excellence and devotion in our work honor Him and fulfill His purposes. Faith in God's provision. The episode of the manna and quail serves as a reminder to be content and trust in God's provision. Complaining and ingratitude can lead to spiritual and physical consequences. The dangers of rebellion and discontent. Korah's story teaches us the gravity of challenging God's appointed leadership and the consequences of prideful rebellion. True humility and submission to God's order are essential for unity and blessing.